Hi, I'm Milton,
And I'm Bert.
and welcome to World Africa Experience. So today we are going to talk about an African elephant. It's such a huge animal. So basically, elephants, they're the biggest and heaviest land mammal. A fully grown bull is well known to weigh all the way up to 6 tons. It's such a heavy,
That's
very,
pretty heavy.
very pretty heavy.
That's
And very, very organized animals in general. And the way they live in a very big family group. They are gregarious, meaning that they live in a big family group where they're led by a matriarch, which is the older female who has quite some great experiences when it comes to making decisions, finding water, finding some food, and she does help a lot when it comes to communication and locating great places for food. And Bert, your experience with elephants?
I've noticed that elephants have got a whole lot of different skill sets, but it's the way they just work with their body. Humans have got hands, elephants have got tusks, and you find that tusks, they work quite handy in actually digging out food roots or debarking trees, which is, well, some people have got different opinions on how it's supposed to be, because I've noticed in some parks they will put a mesh around their trees to make sure that they don't debark, because obviously the carrying capacity have to be right to make sure that your trees don't get taken down. But basically, those tusks, I've been lucky to see some huge tuskers traveling around, almost touching the ground, and I've been lucky to see tuskless elephants as well, where tusks on some species don't even grow at all. A term that we will call a recessive gene. Some bulls are starting to mate at a very young age, and theoretically, and then it's causing some elephants not to develop tusks at all, which is something that I've always seen quite interesting.
It did, yeah. So it's quite amazing because we've got these animals throughout Africa. We've got the African elephant. We also have some other species like the desert elephant. They are quite adaptive to their surroundings. They can basically cope up and figure out how to live in a certain environment. So if you think of desert elephants, if you think of our elephants here in Zimbabwe, there's still some areas where there isn't a lot of food, there isn't a lot of trees, so they can still pick up one or two things in that area. They kind of adapt. My experience as a professional guide, when I walk in safari, I have a very, very great respect to these elephants because it's an animal which you need to be very careful when you're walking. By maintaining your distances, making sure that your wind direction is perfect on you at all times. And generally, I would say on a walking safari, you would probably need at least to be on a flat ground, around 70, 80 meters on a flat ground, so that you can view the elephant nicely without getting detected or without getting disturbed, and it feels very great. It will be on its comfort zone. Otherwise, in any case, there are some times where in the event that the terrain is quite great, maybe you're on a highly elevated area or in an area where there are mountains or gullies, then you can approach quite closer because you've got an advantage of your terrain. It's quite great. Yeah. How about you? What happens on your traveling as an overland guide?
Well, as an overland guide, you find that sometimes when you're using the big vehicle, it's a little bit of a different story. But we always exercise extreme caution when we're approaching the elephants, especially if you start bumping into bulls in must or just even a big herd of elephants showing signs of emotion. The temporal glands is dripping. We always have escape routes, especially in the small vehicles. But speaking of the elephant in must, it's something quite interesting.
It is.
It's
It is. But however, these guys, they're they're amazing keystone species. What happened is without elephants, they play a very important role, quite an integral role in the ecosystem, because there are some trees they can actually grow up to their climates. By doing so, the other animals might not be able to access them. So elephants being there, they can distract and they are able as well to grow. So if they break a tree, they can eat just a little bit, all right? And then after a short period of time, an impala, which is quite a smaller antelope, it cannot climb up the tree. Yeah? So it will feed on the trees which are right at the bottom. So they play quite a very important role when it comes to the ecosystem and balancing as well. You know, of course, fire plays a very important role when it comes to balancing the grass and everything. But when elephants are eating, you know, it's something whereby we can always say, okay, we would want to see elephants, giraffes all in one area, because there is what we call the ecological carrying capacity and the population dynamics. It has to be at a state of equilibrium. Why? Because if you have too many elephants in on one area, they can distract and damage the whole area, and they might not have food for the rest of the time as it comes. So moving around, it helps them to have a variety of food. And there's this thing, I don't know if you heard that trees in general, they have a tendency of communicating chemically. So after some about short period of time, if an elephant is browsing on a tree, it has to move off a bit slowly, because there is a change of taste which is happening in the tree. So the high levels of tannin up on a tree, it makes that elephant to move from one tree to another. So they do kind of cover very, very long grounds when it comes to distances. You know, you think in Wange National Park in Zimbabwe, they can cover the whole park in short period of time because they need that variety of food. And by so doing, by moving as well, it plays a very important role. Why? Because if they eat here, the food, when it get digested, after few hours, it will drop the dung there, and that dung, it also helps as a seed dispersal. So it's quite an important
That's
thing.
quite interesting. Yeah, and elephants being hindgut fermenters as well, I suppose. It can be dangerous for them feeding off those trees. I think it's called secondary metabolism.
That's right.
Whereby they start, apparently that those tannins, they can damage the bacteria in the stomach that they won't be able to digest, right? It's quite a big topic.
Indeed.
But generally, how much do they normally need to eat?
Well, you know what? They're amazing. They're bulk feeders. You know, their teeth, they've got what they call hypersodont teeth, high crown teeth, which are able to grind the food. But as you've mentioned about the hindgut fermenters, so an adult bull would probably need closer to 300 kilograms of food a day, which is quite long day eating. So the food varies from grass, fruits, tree leaves, and all sorts, and they can also dig for some minerals, and they're also well known to eat soil. It's well known to eat soil. That process is known as a geophagy. It's basically earth eating, where they need some minerals for trace elements. So when it comes to food, they're quite great. And they drink almost about 120 liters of water a day. And by doing so, they still travel for distances and searching for water. And sometimes they go in dry riverbed where they still dig, they still dig in the dry sand, and the water can still percolate, and they can drain. That trunk can siphon about 15 liters of water at a given time, which they've got some amazing, I don't know if you've heard that, they've got what is known as a referential pouch. It's a pouch that stores water for quite long. So if they go in an area where it's kind of dry, they can actually disgorge, put it back into the trunk and give it to a calf. I've seen that in one of the game reserve before.
Something quite interesting. I mean, I've been lucky to pick up fresh elephant dung, squeeze it, and almost pure water comes out. I've drank it, unfortunately, or fortunately. It's actually quite healthy. People don't even realize it because it's the sweet smell. I just wanted to show my guests, how it all functions. That's the reason why they would drink so much water, because it's that facilitation of the digestive system is quite great. They do require that when it comes to drinking water. Anyway, we're gonna go for a short break. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a while. All right, welcome back to Wild Africa Experience.
Lovely.
All right, so we were talking about earlier think we're about to start talking about the trunk.
The trunk, yeah.
And the pouch and stuff, the cool stuff.
All right, okay. All right, yeah, I talked about the referential pouch. All right, so basically the trunk has some amazing muscles. It has got all the way over 100,000 muscles, and it's got a very, very amazing weapon. It's used as an arm. It can be used as it's like a hand, and it's used for wind detection and nose and all the same thing. So it's quite a very, very important tool on an elephant because it is dexterous. It can even pick up a single nut on the ground. That's how flexible it can be.
Wow.
So I've seen a video clip the other day where a lion cub was actually holding on an elephant trunk, sitting on there. So that trunk, it's amazing. It's a very special weapon, which it uses for quite a lot of things. Danger signs, and sometimes you find that it lifts up the trunk and try to sense around and sniff around. And so those signs, we have to observe those signs when you're doing some kind of walking safari. Talking about the on experience, you mentioned that you had some dangerous encounters on an elephant on a mobile safari.
Oh yeah, I've had a few. There was the one where there were a few elephant bulls and they came into camp, and they started breaking into the food, but of a different tour operator. And he was so scared, and they're breaking it down, eating the lettuce and everything. So my guests were looking, and these are desert elephants, eh?
Really?
Mind you, there are only probably less than 400 desert elephants left. So we were lucky to have 4 big bulls in camp. And I decided, okay, I'm going to just take the show from here. So I went after them, eh? Full speed running. I've got a picture actually that's always on my profile, and I'm busy banging my cups. Luckily, they were not in must, because an elephant in must is something that's actually people need to know about. It's a Hindu word that means intoxication or crazy. All right, it's when an elephant reaches a very high testosterone level and it wants to mate, and they start doing it from about 12. Going onwards when they reach puberty, and they cannot breed, but when they get to about 25, it starts staying longer for about as long as 3 months, 30, it starts getting longer, and they want to breed. They just dribbling, which is whereby it looks like they're urinating on the back of their legs, and it turns green eventually, and they walk with the head held high like this. And they're just trying to attack anything that comes their way, in particular vehicles, and that's something quite dangerous. And should be aware of some few signs that they show as well, which is the emotional gland that is on the side. Some people call it the temporal gland. It starts dripping, and then it shows a big black scar on the side, and they just they are very stressed during that time. And they don't take I'm sure you understand how testosterone can have an effect on a human being. Eh?
That's right. It happened before when I was driving one of the game reserve. Yeah, it was quite hectic. I was driving in a very situation in a gorge kind of, and I had no escape route. And somewhere I just bumped into that elephant bull, and it started chasing us. It had no signs of aggressive. It just started chasing us. I had to reverse for about 5 kilometers, Imagine, that's where I realized that as a guide, it's not only about guiding. You have to know as well how to drive properly. Driving, reversing, using the mirrors, it's quite amazing.
Reassuring
the guests, yeah. So it's quite good. So it was trumpeting, coming our way, jumping around. So I knew that, the distance I maintained it was quite good. So yeah, it's quite hectic.
No, that's pretty something. And I mean, we talk about the speed. They're quite fast and very quiet. When elephants walk, it's as if they were not even there unless they brush against a tree. Because remember, they're walking on tiptoe. They're like a woman on high heels, but what they have is a padding underneath with a cartilage that expands and contracts every time they move. So you find that it helps them to be very quiet, and also it doesn't put so much pressure on their body. So yeah, no,
It's quite good. So they kind of have some shock absorbers, eh?
Shock absorbers.
Walk
You
so
say that.
quietly, yeah.
Yeah, they say a woman's high heels exerts more pressure on the ground than an elephant's foot. And we're talking about 6 tons of
That's
animal.
That's a heavy animal. That's very huge.
And there's something quite interesting as well, because you find that their communication skills are somewhat out of this world. Eh? They rumble, they trumpet, and every sign, every sound has a meaning. And they also have subsonic sounds that are below our hearing abilities, and that's something quite interesting, because I think there's only the first person that ever recorded the sounds had to put the cassette on a very, very high resolution so that they can hear them communicating. And those travel further. They tend to travel further because they can go even past some trees. And I've noticed in some game reserve, if there's a photographic reserve next to a place where maybe elephants are being troubled, and they pick up the subsonic sounds, and suddenly they start chasing vehicles or becoming a bit agitated as well, which is something that I've noticed that's quite interesting. And also the way they receive information is something that I've noticed theoretically that it's quite interesting. All animals are equipped with special Pacinian capsules under their feet. And with elephants, apparently they are so, they're like a little orange onion ringy type of thing with a gel inside that deforms every time because the subsonic sounds move in seismic waves, and they pick them up from the feet. And I've noticed elephants putting their trunk on the ground. Have you seen that?
Yeah, trying to sense and
then they
pick up
sense
the
as
sounds,
well.
yeah.
It must be the vibronasal capsules as well. Something that I find quite interesting. Eh? I remember in some parts, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the tsunami in I think the Sri Lanka elephants. They started moving uphill like 2 weeks before, of which other animals, dogs, and they pick it up like 5 minutes before. So their capsules are not as highly developed as the elephant's capsules. But speaking of that communication, I've always wondered, because I know you do as a pro guide, you do a lot of walking safaris.
Yeah.
I would expect that even if you try to walk slowly, they should probably be able to pick you up. I know they probably know you are there, because you're saying, we were talking about the distances the other day, about the 50-meter distance.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So basically, walking safari, it's something which is a very amazing thing to do. It takes that natural fear off, and it's an experience which you need to give to our guests in Zimbabwe. So when you're walking an elephant, first of all, you just need to have all the tools for walking. You need to have the right regalia, natural clothing. You need to have your water. You need to have your binoculars. And obviously, as a professional guide, you have to be armed. Carry a rifle in the event that something happens. You need to protect yourself. So basically, when you're on a walking safari, you need to be very vigilant at all times when you are walking area where elephants are. There are a lot of signs that can tell you that elephants, they've been here. We can look at the trees. Some of them, they'll be broken, fresh elephant dung on the road. So by having those clues, you always constantly need to check your wind direction. How will you check a wind direction? There is what we call an ash bag. Ash bag, it's just a little bag where you put the ashes, and then as you check your wind direction, the wind has to blow towards you. If the wind blows towards where you're walking, that means that an elephant can meet you halfway. So when it comes to approaching the game, in the event that you've used your binocular, or if you've seen it from a distance, you then check your wind direction again and slowly approach. So there is what we call zones when you approach the game. There is a comfort zone. When you're in a comfort zone, an animal will be very comfortable with your approach. It doesn't need, it doesn't feel being disturbed. Sometimes it does know that you're there, but in most cases you'll be very, very far. The wind will be perfectly on your favor. And then when you move further, probably 10 more meters, and if it does happen to pick you up, you'll be then in an alert zone. That means that whatever an animal is doing, that elephant, it's feeding, but it keeps on checking that you are there. So that's an alert zone. So that's an area where you need to remain and watch the signs of the animal when it comes to the danger. And if you move in forward, you're now in the critical zone. And the critical zone usually it's a time where if an animal it does not have an option but to flee or fight. So I would say when walking an elephant, try and keep your distances, because they can be very dangerous, because they can run very fast and you cannot do anything. You cannot climb a tree. The only safest way for you for your comfort will be scan and look for a safe ground for you to hide. So that's walking safari with elephants. And I tell you what, it's an amazing thing. Anyway, it's time for a short break.
All right, Milton, that was interesting. But how do you know when the danger arises and an elephant is about to charge?
All right, so as a professional guide, this is how we get taught. That's what we learned. You know, the signs in an animal. So when an elephant is coming for a real charge, there won't be now noises. The animal comes in. The ears will be flat on its head. The trunk will be curled right between the front leg, and this animal will be silent, coming to you. The head held higher, held down, and the animal will be coming at a very high speed. And the only moment when that happens, really you need to have a heavy caliber with you, and you need to quickly scan for a safe ground.
Wow, that's quite interesting.
So those are the signs which you need to look into. Other warning signs like trumpeting, head shake, those are what you call warning signs. I always try and refrain from the term mock charge, because a lot of people, they have a tendency of forgetting that, and when an animal is coming for real charge, it then kills them, because they can't distinguish between a warning charge and a mock charge. So those are the signs when an elephant is coming. It won't be making noise. It just comes straight for you.
That's quite interesting, eh? Not everything is on the house.
Absolutely,
The charges are a little different. All right, speaking of elephants, there's quite a few places that you can find elephants in Zimbabwe. There's Gonarejo, there is
Wange National Park, you know, where we have quite a lot of elephants. Manapus, Zambezi Valley, and a lot of private game reserves in Zimbabwe. There we have African elephants.
And they being gregarious species as well, you find herds of them, thousands of them. Especially Wange National Park, and because they traverse between Wange and the Transfrontier Park into Botswana and back into Zimbabwe.
It's quite amazing. Those Transfrontier Park, they've been there to help to open the corridors of animals like elephants for them to traverse between different countries without any boundaries, you know. So it's very good, because in animals, it's quite important for the males and animals to move around areas so that they can improve the gene pool as well. You know, males, they're gene carriers. They carry a gene there. They go and mate and breed in different areas, which is a great thing. Moving around and mixing up with different breeds and heads.
It's all about survival of the fittest, eh?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I suppose next time we'll talk more about elephants. There's so much information about this, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of information. So see you next time on Wild African Experience.